Hey everybody, welcome back to this week's weekly market update for week of February
27.
2017. Now, this week what we're doing is we will look at the numbers as we do every week, and we'll talk about supply and demand. But more importantly, what I want to get through this week is the biggest buyer and seller mistakes I'm seeing being made in the current market and what you can do to avoid those. So that and more coming up right next. So a bit of a twist this week because we will talk about the numbers, but we'll go through them really quickly as I do want to get to my biggest buyer and seller mistakes and tips section this week. So let's dive right into numbers. On your screen, you're seeing a map of demand, and it's red right across the board, which basically means that demand is up right across Metro Vancouver from the month prior, from January. Now, we've got a couple of days left in February before the month calendar switches over to March. At that point, we'll have next week the full data set. We can talk more about what happened in February. Really quickly, we're seeing about 52% absorption on the west side of Vancouver, 58% on the east side, higher in some other areas as well. Anything above 19% absorption, or AKA demand, is a seller's market. So we're pretty much back in a very strong seller's territory with low inventory. Also, looking at the slide which we had last week as well, that line at the very top there, the white line showing you what detached homes are doing, so they are quite in the buyer's territory. But the black line down below, that's condos, and we can see that we're in a very strong seller's market for condos, so it is important to differentiate the different market segments. Now, let's get to the topic that I really want to talk about this week, though, and that is the biggest buyer and seller mistakes that we're seeing being made in the current market and what we can do to avoid those. So I'll start with sellers, and the first mistake I'm seeing is that sellers, in some cases, are overpricing their properties. So when you're in a seller's market, yes, you're in a great position to be in because most of the leverage when you go to negotiate is in your favor, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you can start right out of the gate with a really high number. You have to price a property appropriately so that you can get as many eyes on the property as possible from potential buyers. And then as they come in and they like the property, hopefully, what they'll do is they'll start bidding on it. And then we can hopefully leverage those multiple offers to get you a price point that's going to be above asking, and in some cases quite significantly. Now, if you start with a really high number, way above market value to begin with, what might happen is that buyers may assume that there's not a serious seller on the other side of that transaction, or they may just write the property off, not look at it at all because it appears to be overpriced. So we don't want you to be in a situation where you're hitting the market with the wrong number to start with, not getting enough traffic through it, not getting enough leverage through it, and then being stuck with an overpriced listing on market. Now, the second mistake I'm seeing sellers make is just not preparing enough, and that means doing things like staging, so you have to stage your property properly. Doesn't mean you have to hire a professional stager, but you should prepare to make sure your property is looking as attractive as possible. We want to do certain tricks like, for example, removing any personal items. That includes personal photographs, so that a buyer can envision themselves in your space, envision it as their own home. So there's a lot of things that we can do to tweak a space to make it look just magazine perfect. And that will work really well for the media advertising as well. And finally, the third mistake we're seeing is sellers not qualifying the professionals they're working with well enough. One thing that I would ask a potential new hired realtor in your selection process is, have you handled multiple offers on the listing side? And what do you do to handle those offers? So one thing that we always try and do when we list a property is we want to make sure that all of our birds are lined up properly. And so when we're listing a property, we also want to make sure we have guidelines in place for what will happen when we get multiple offers, and prepare all of the documents needed to ensure people can do their due diligence before writing multiple offers. So not only do you get multiple offers, but you get hopefully some offers which are subject free, all cash. So there's a lot more to it. We can discuss that in private if you have questions about that. Now if you are a buyer, here are some of the biggest mistakes I'm seeing right now. Number one, it's just not being prepared well enough. So not knowing what to expect when you head into the marketplace. It is obviously very competitive right now. We see that just based on the numbers we spoke about at the beginning of this video, and if you've been searching for a home, you will have very well experienced going to an open house and seeing 10 other groups in a small one-bedroom condo. So you have to know what to expect when you go into the marketplace. part of that is also my second point, which is being prepared, and that is having all of your due diligence done ahead of time. So reading the strat documents before you write an offer is a good idea, so you can remove that subject. Having not only pre-approval with the good mortgage broker in place, but actually having that specific property approved before you write on it, again, is a good idea, because then you can take off a financing clause and make your offer much more competitive. And number 3 is being too small picture oriented. So keep in mind, when you're buying a property, you have to consider how it fits into your long-term plan. And so if a specific property that you like doesn't hit all the check marks on your list, you may want to go through an analysis and decide which check marks are more important than others, keeping in mind that the property you buy today is not going to be the property you live in for the rest of your life in many cases. It is a stepping stone into the market. It's a stepping stone up the real estate ladder. So if you have any specific questions as to how this information may pertain to your situation, whether you're selling or buying a condo, I'd love to help, and you can reach me by calling or texting the number right below. Now, of course, if you like this video, I hope you like this Facebook page, and also share this video with your family and friends, because we do post here every single week. So until this time next week, have a wonderful week ahead. Bye-bye.